Okay, so yeah, I'm Obby Robinson, and I'm a poet from Lethmatchan, the most haunted town in England. And I'm going to read a sort of longish, but not too long poem, hopefully, about yeah, it's based on a bit of folklore from either Hissington or Bagbury. I think that depends on whether you're from Hissington or Bagbury. And it's about a wicked landlord who died, thankfully, and came back as a flayed bull, yeah, to haunt everyone. Okay. Um, I'll see if I can remember it, but I might have to sort of stop and refresh myself. Okay. It starts with a quote. I actually got the idea from Westwood and Simpson, as you know, we all know a great resource for this kind of stuff, and it got me onto a book by a guy called John Austen, who wrote in 1906 a book called Memorials of Old Shropshire, and this was the kind of the cue for the poem. It says, there he made such a rush that all the candles were blown out except that of an old Nine parson named Pigeon, who knew him and was prepared for his violence. Anyway, this is the Nine Parsons. Once, upon the English border, there lived a wicked hoarder, whose tenantry had every right to fear him. But after 70 years and making merry hell for them, his heart gave out to much unchristian cheering. That night when the curate came to see him, he was staring at the ceiling with the kind of gaze you usually see on salmon. But his first whiff of parson, he just coughed and started laughing, saying, "You left it late to wrestle me from mammon. The only good thing I ever did was throw some bum a penny. Once I dropped a crust of bread on a kid who hadn't any. But in the sky there is a ledger, by which the Lord does measure the good returned against the damage done. And right here in this bedroom, I feel a scorching on my breastbone. Is the waiting fire hotter than the sun?" It was to say he spoke in error when that look of clear-eyed terror became as furtive as a beast's when it's been trapped, and all the curate's talk of clemency seemed to have nothing more than heresy, as if the walls that kept out Rome had quite collapsed. By morning the wretch was dead, and the county celebrated, though they would have wept instead if they knew but what awaited. For that night a fearful storm racked the old man's farm, causing terror in those who had been his neighbours. When the shutters and the boards were blown from the walls, they called out to the curate, "Come and save us!" Where the moon shone dim and white as for a second night, the good man ran to the same destination, but the changes he saw there and the sounds upon the air, he greeted them with fear and consternation. As soon as he entered in, he beheld the cause. The ghost of the man he'd just seen die was trapped within the hall. He was shaped just like a bull, with eyes of burning coal and horns as curled and sharp as sabres, and every inch of skin had been flayed right off of him, and he was howling like the devil's damned neighbour. With a shrill demented squeal, the curate turned upon his heel, crying, "Tell my fellow ministers they're needed. The spirit that's invaded, it's too great to lay unaided." It was a request that did not go unheeded. From all around the county, 8 clergymen arrived. The brows were as thunder and there was fire in their eyes, even the last though blind as Milton, with a nose all vein like Stilton. An advocate of Lord, for he was indicted, he cried out, "Hear this all of you, I know exactly what to do, just take me to where the horror was last sighted." Each took a Bible, turned to Psalms, held firmly in their hands, and a candle to aid them in their reading. And with hearts all chill, they walked out across the fields, not knowing where the road was leading. They entered that doomed abode, as dogs enter a cage, and the flayed bull flew at them, a-quivering with rage. It tore a Bible to confetti, then like some skinless parmacetti, it rose above the curates, then descended. 9 voices screamed out in alarm as the great brute broke upon them, for they fought as if their life had gone unended. Then to a great ungodly roar, they got themselves up from the floor. Each one of them had kept his candle burning, and never for a second did they cease their calls to heaven, as round the beast again they started turning. The more they prayed, the less it roared, till at last, when it grew mute, the fiend escaped across the fields and parsons in pursuit. As it ran, the spook grew smaller, till soon it was no taller than the tallest of the figures on its tail. And by degree it grew quite tame, its eyes lost all their flame, its body became shockingly pale. When no bigger than a rabbit, a bold curate made to grab it. As he did, he felt a breeze soft on his hand, Then broken was the hush. For a wind all in a rush, it tore itself a passage across the land. It flew around the Nine Parsons, and each let out a shout as it almost knocked them from their feet and blew their candles out. In the dark, the great bull rose, and the curate's blood ran cold. As it roared so loud it felled a nearby oak. As it increased in proportion, it suffered gross contortions as if its body was a mass of squirming rope. And when it roared again, the parsons couldn't bear the pain. They fell down as blood shot from their ears, and with eyes tight shut, fervent prayers were offered up, for they felt as if their graves were drawing near. Even as they thought all hope was lost, a voice cried, "Don't despair!" All turned and saw the blind parson with his candle in the air. For having no need of light, he had kept it out of sight, safe in the upturned hat he carried. And all the parsons ran and lit their tallow from the man who had saved them from being prematurely buried. Then with candle and with book, the curates undertook to finally rid the county of the demon. It finally got so small, it was trapped in a bottle that was cast into the Red Sea of Bur-Sudan. As the ghost was laid at last, the blind parson shook his head, and to no one in particular, these few words he said: "Our religion does insist that purgatory does not exist, and ghosts are nothing but illusions. Our faith has saved us from a threat that faith does not accept. I leave you to draw your own conclusions."